there's a lot of corn in the world. Global production is at a record level this year. China had record production. The US had record production. Argentina came out of drought. Huge amount of corn in the world. The good news is that corn consumption has also increased.
Hello.
Oh.
Thank you for being here with us today. Eu voi continua în limba română. Îl avem alături de noi pe domnul Levin Flake, căruia îi mulțumim, Consilierul USDA. Astăzi, mai mult ca niciodată, vedem că volatilitatea prețurilor, volatilitatea în general în ceea ce privește sistemul agricol mondial, este la cote nemai întâlnite. Suntem, deci, supuși unor presiuni, pe de o parte, pe de altă parte, suntem obligați să facem față acestor schimbări, să ne adaptăm, dar am putea să facem lucrul acesta și mai bine dacă am fi documentați, dacă am avea cifre care să ne spună exact cum stau lucrurile. De aceea, domnule Levin Flake, vă mulțumim că sunteți alături de noi și sperăm că astăzi ne veți lămuri un pic mai mult legat de cum stau lucrurile astăzi la nivel mondial în ceea ce privește porumbul în primul rând. Floor is yours.
Oh, great. Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity to come here and talk about the U.S. and global corn market. So I'd just like to start by talking about the global situation, and then I'll talk more specifically about the United States. And I'm focusing on corn, but I just want to do one slide on wheat to kind of show the contrast between the two grains. You can see that global wheat production increased 4 years in a row, and but this year it's actually dropped a little bit. So I wouldn't say it's a tight situation, but as you'll see from corn, it's not as plentiful as the corn situation. So stocks are lower, but still ample. Now, when you switch to talk about the corn market, I guess the summary is there's a lot of corn in the world. Global production is at a record level this year. Pretty much other than the EU, almost every other major corn producer had a great crop. China had record production. The US had record production. Argentina came out of drought. So huge amount of corn in the world. The good news is that corn consumption has also increased, but not to the extent. So we're expecting in USDA for global ending stocks to be at a 6-year high. And so that will also impact the market going into next year. In terms of kind of the major change in exporters, the U.S. is seeing the largest increase in exports. This is due to our big crop. And actually, so far this year, U.S. sales have been up 30% from the last year. Argentina, as I mentioned, strong drought last year. They're recovering. We also see Brazil exports up. Their safrinha crop looks to be down, but they have a lot of stocks. Even Ukraine, we're forecasting lower exports, but their crop is good. And with Odessa largely back open, we see a lot of Ukrainian corn coming up. Overall, corn trade is forecasted being up 10%. So as I mentioned, a lot of corn in the world. USDA is forecasting Brazil to remain the largest exporter, followed by the United States, Argentina, and Ukraine. So those four suppliers will remain dominant on the corn market. The other thing I'd just like to briefly talk about is barley. Much lower volumes, but we're forecasting barley trade to fall. This is mainly because of Australia. Australia's had a lot of barley last year. Their major market is China. And China put prohibitive duties on Australia barley. So you had a lot of that barley finding markets in Southeast Asia, in markets that normally buy corn. With China removing the duties and with the Australian crop being down, we're expecting some of that corn to go back into Southeast Asia. Now just kind of shifting back to what's happening in the United States. As I mentioned, we had record corn production this year. Acreage was up 5%, so there was expectation of a big crop, but then there was a lot of drought stress early in the season. So farmers, analysts were very worried about the U.S. corn crop, but it very much finished strong at the end of the year. And so, like I said, ended up being a record. And then I guess the big story is U.S. ending stocks are up sharply this year because of that larger crop. So once again, this is impacting not only U.S. prices, but global prices. And then just in terms of kind of the average U.S. farm price, USDA is forecasting that to be down about 27% this year, much steeper than wheat or soybeans. As I mentioned, there was a lot of shifting in acreage from corn to from soybeans to corn. So really, it is the corn market that is the most impacted by lower prices. I did just want to mention briefly on logistics. Most of the U.S. corn crops comes out of the Gulf of Mexico, and if it goes to Asia, it goes through the Panama Canal to Asia. And there have been major logistical problems with a low Panama Canal. So because of that, a lot of shipments have had to be rerouted longer distances. This has been a big problem, and it's raised freight rates. But because of the low prices, we see demand still continuing to be strong. And as I mentioned, our sales are up 30% from last year. So I did just want to kind of talk a little bit on a longer trend in the United States, which is the huge shift in area from wheat to corn and soybeans. It's been dramatic over the last few decades. And this is due to a number of reasons. One is the growth in Black Sea wheat suppliers. Russia, Ukraine, even Romania and Bulgaria, have impacted U.S. exports. Second reason is increase in domestic demand in the United States, ethanol use, things like that. But then the third is really improvements in seed genetics and varieties. I like to show this map, which shows where in the United States saw the most change in corn acreage. And you can see it's really in the northern parts. These are places where previously the season was too short to grow corn, but with variety changes, shorter season crops, and other things, you've seen places where you previously couldn't grow corn, now being able to grow more corn. And then, as I mentioned, kind of a dramatic story has been the drop in U.S. wheat exports. Previously we accounted for about a third of world trade. This year it's less than 10%. So as they say, corn is king in the United States, and that trend has certainly continued. And then obviously in terms of genetics, in terms of corn, over 90% is the biotech varieties. And so one of the reasons farmers have switched from wheat is just the increasing yields, better genetics on corn. And then, as I mentioned, one of the stories has been the huge growth in ethanol use in the United States. That has leveled off over the last decade, and now it's pretty much changes in production directly correlate to exports. And then I just wanted to finish up kind of talking just briefly about some of USDA's sustainability efforts. We've announced $3.1 billion for 141 projects on climate-smart agricultural commodities. So we're very much taking a carrot approach, working with the farmers and the agricultural groups in creating initiatives, both in corn and other products, to produce it more sustainably. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Așa cum am văzut pentru Statele Unite ale Americii, există și influențe dinspre România, ceea ce e un lucru bun, pentru că de fiecare dată suntem cu gândul la faptul că doar noi suntem impactați de ceea ce se întâmplă în Europa de Vest sau în Statele Unite ale Americii, ceea ce e interesant de aflat. Un alt aspect important pe care cred că l-am înțeles din ceea ce ne-a prezentat domnul Flake, cred că este faptul că prețurile au fost în scădere peste tot. Nu este o tendință doar în zona bazinului Mării Negre și cu toții trebuie să înțelegem lucrul acesta. Poate ce nu reușim să înțelegem încă sunt mecanismele prin care putem să fim mai eficienți în Europa astăzi. Și vorbeam mai devreme cu fermierii noștri și sunt discuțiile din ultima perioadă cum să facem să rămânem eficienți. Cred că un prim pas este să fim atenți și la aceste cifre. Vorbim de USDA, care reprezintă o sursă de date extrem de importantă. Vă mulțumim pentru faptul că putem să învățăm câte ceva și putem să vedem care sunt tendințele. Pot să vă asigur că fermierii din România, cel puțin prin forumul APPR, așteaptă cu nerăbdare de fiecare dată publicarea raportului USDA, care reprezintă încă o sursă extrem de viabilă de informație și sperăm să rămână așa și pe viitor, până se vor dezvolta și alte studii poate mai apropiate de noi. Thank you so much! Mulțumesc foarte mult, domnule Flake, și sperăm să vă mai avem alături de noi și cu altă ocazie. Mulțumesc foarte mult!
Thanks.
Thank you.